evening, everyone. You're watching Vintage Motocross Q&A, and I'm your host, Joe Abadi. Thank you for watching the program tonight. As always, I want to thank Jordan Woodworth, Chelsea, Susie, and everyone that helps make this show possible every week. And thank you, the viewers, who tune in every Wednesday at 6. We've got a great show lined up for you tonight, so let's get down to the starting line, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it. By the way, the starting line is now sponsored by Motion Pro, great company for cables and tools, and we're going to be seeing a lot more of their products in the very near future here on the show. Jordan, what's up first? Next time, try this. We're going to be talking a little bit about float needles and seats, how you could prevent your carburetor from leaking. In the Moto Showcase, we take a look at a 1975 Honda CR125 that was sent in by a viewer. Really nice looking little bike. We're going to tell you a bit more about it. And here's the problem segment. We've got at least 3 or 4 questions. Some of them are they're about spokes, it's about powder coating. There's a couple of different things going on. I'm looking forward to telling you more about that. And what's it worth? The 79 Honda CR250. She wasn't pretty, but she sure could dance. I'll tell you more about that in a little while. 522 project continues. We've got a nice video put together there. Tell you a little bit more about that when we get to that point of the show. Preston Petty in the announcement section. Very, very rare item coming up from Preston Petty Products. I'll tell you a bit more about it when we get to the announcements later on. As always, I'd like you to share the program. If you're on Facebook, you can comment AMSOIL. If you're on YouTube, please comment AMSOIL. And if you're on Facebook, comment about whatever you like, but please share the show with your friends. This segment is, of course, brought to you by AMSOIL, and we're going to be giving away some AMSOIL products a little bit later on in the show to somebody who randomly shares it. So be sure to do that. YouTube, the show's growing every week on YouTube, and I really would like some more viewers to get involved. If you can, get some of your friends to subscribe. You can watch every episode of Vintage Motocross Q&A and listen to all the episodes of Vintage Motocross Radio on YouTube if you subscribe. You also get a little, there's a little bell thing that goes on there. Tells you when we're coming on the air. Jordan usually puts it up there on the screen. There it is. But you can watch the shows on your big screen TV in HD and listen to the interviews as well. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel. As always, I want to thank our sponsors. Nightmare Racing, the finest plastic, reproduction plastic for Kawasaki's on the planet. Vinco, keep the ride going. Preston Petty, AMSOIL, Full Circle Racing, and of course, our new sponsor, Motion Pro. Thank you all so much for your support and your products here at Vintage Motocross Q&A. Tonight's Next Time Try This segment is brought to you by Vinco. Visit them online, Vinco. Keep the ride going. Tonight, I want to talk to you a little bit about carburetors and problems that you can have with the needle valve leaking and causing your carburetor to overflow. Your carburetor fills up with gas. We're all very familiar with that. The floats drop when the carburetor is needing gas. They go up when the carburetor bowl is full. As the bike uses more fuel, it drops down again, and so on as we go. What happens is there's something in there called a needle valve and a needle seat. When you're not racing and your bike is turned off, gas can still get through, especially if you have a leaky petcock. That bowl can continue to fill up, and eventually it will get so high, gas will start dumping into the cylinder. I'm going to show you a little bit more about some of the parts involved with this and how you can check to see if your carburetor is leaking like that and what you can do to test it to make sure it's right. The pieces that we're concerned with are shown right here. It's called the needle valve. The needle valve and the needle seat, or the needle valve and the needle seat. Also, on the needle seat is an O-ring just like this, which goes right around here. These parts can wear out. And when they do, it can cause a leak in your carburetor to where it can overflow. I'm going to show you now on this carb right here exactly where this sits. This is the needle valve that I was talking about. It sits right here in the carburetor. This piece is spring-loaded, and it sits right down here just like this. Then your floats go on, And that's the way it works. As gas goes in and fills the carburetor up or fills up the bowl, the floats will go up, that needle will seat, and gas will stop coming into the carburetor until your motorcycle requires more gasoline. The float drops, gas is then passed through, and the bowl fills up once again. With the carburetor nice and clean and all fully assembled, you're going to want to add a clear fuel line like this right to where your gas would be going into your carburetor. With that line, you're going to fill the float. You could take a little cup of gas, premix, whatever you're going to use, and you're going to fill up the bowl of the carburetor. When you see the gas start to come up through this clear line right here, you're going to want it to get to maybe, well, anywhere in this area right here, but wherever it fills up to, you're going to mark it with a Sharpie, just like this. You're then going to let the carburetor sit for an hour or so, and you're going to monitor whether or not that gas has dropped in that line. If it has dropped, you know you have a leaky needle seat, and you're going to want to get that addressed. That's my tip for this week on Next Time Try This. I want to thank VMXQ for being a sponsor of Vintage Motocross Q&A.
Robert Oscar Pomeroy for sending in that tip to us. Also, I said in that segment that you might want to wait an hour. You might want to wait overnight, and you might want to tilt that carburetor just a little bit while it's in that vise, because what happens is that the float needle and seat, if they leak, the gas is going to start dripping out toward the cylinder. Okay, you might not notice it right away, but if a bike was sitting overnight, or if you left the petcock open, or it was leaking even if it was closed, gas continually dumps in there, and it's going to start to leak out and go into the cylinder. So my advice about waiting an hour, I would wait overnight. That's what I would do. And again, thank you, Robert Oscar Pomeroy, for sending us in that tip. Next up, we have a 1975 Honda CR125 that was sent in to us from Percy Clark, and that is in the Moto Showcase tonight. Percy says to us he bought this bike about 4 years ago. It was complete and running when he bought it. It was just slightly rough around the edges. It was painted a 1974 Honda CR125 green. He wanted to make somewhat of a racer out of it, but he wanted to reassemble it and make it nice, make a nice weekend racer, and do a couple of period correct modifications to it. He did the usual things, such as seals, brake pads. He put Dunlop tires on it and tubes. He also checked the bore. Everything was fine. He had a rear wheel that he had to put on from a 1975. The original one was broken. It does have a reproduction gas tank on it, which I found very interesting. Also, there are new side covers from VMX. All the decals, including the Fox Racing backgrounds and fork protectors, are from FastGuyStuff.com. He also added a brand new DG Racing exhaust. It had an FMF pipe on it, but it was pretty banged up. He also added some larger foot pegs. The Elsinore is probably my favorite bike in my collection, says Percy, and he sometimes keeps it on display in the Glenn H. Curtis Museum in the Lake regions of New York. Percy, I want to thank you so much for sending in your bike and into us this week for the Moto Showcase. And I know you've got some stickers on there from FastGuyStuff.com, but you're going to get some more stickers, compliments of Sean Gomes and FastGuyStuff.com. Percy, thank you once again. Oh, next week on the show, we got a 1974 KX125 sent in to us by Mike Regier. We're really starting to get traction with you guys sending in bikes for the Moto Showcase. If you do so, inbox me. I'll give you my email address. You can send pictures to my email, and we'll be happy to put it here on the show. Mike Ruggieri next week will have a 1974 KX125. He made some really nice modifications on this bike, including a Skunk Works kit for the carburetor, wider foot pegs. He said he made the pipe himself. I'm looking forward to telling you a bit more about it. Thank you, FastGuyStuff.com, for your support of Vintage Motocross Q&A. Once again, Fast Guy Stuff, giving us all those great stickers for the people who send in bikes. Check out FastGuyStuff.com online and on Facebook. We've got some great products there. Here's the problem segment, sponsored by Motion Pro. Motion Pro, a great company for tools, controls, and cables. We'll be telling you more about Motion Pro on some upcoming episodes. Right now, let's get to the first question. Robert Cure. Joe, in your opinion, what would be some of the best choices for vintage shocks? Fox Airs, Fox Springs, Oleans. Fox Airs are great if you've got the tools to keep up with them. They need to be adjusted a little more often than you probably would like to as a vintage racer. A great trick item if you want to have on your Fox replicas or things like that. And the Fox Springs, those are great shocks too. A little bit hard to come by. For my money, if I were racing a bike, I would go with Works Performance. I think it's the best shock money can buy. Why? It's cheaper than some of your other shocks. It's easier to maintain than like a Fox Air shock. Also, when you order them, you give your weight, you give your dimension of the bike, you give your riding level, and they're going to make you a set of shocks just specific for the way you ride. Also, you can get them rebuilt. So for my money, I would go with a set of Works shocks. I always liked them. I always supported their products. Next question, Jordan. Ricky Gargiulo. Joe, I've decided to have a frame powder coated. Other than inspecting for cracks, is there anything else I should pay close attention to? Yes, Ricky, there is. Two things you should pay attention to are blind thread holes, okay? Any part of the frame where there's a bolt going in, and right here happens to be two things I want to address. In other words, right here, a peg mount goes right where you see it in this picture. And yes, they did either plug or mask off the threaded area where the bolt's going to go in to hold the peg. What they didn't do was mask off the spine. Now, that spine is probably going to be a little bit heavy on the powder coating. You're going to have a hard time getting the peg mount to go over that. Also, if the same thing happened on the peg mount, if the customer had that powder coated as well, it's going to spend some time having to strip down the spline section and of course the spline section on the mount too. So before you get any of that done, make sure you make it clear to your powder coater that you want not only the blind thread holes plugged, but you want anything that has a spline on it masked off completely before it goes in for powder coating. Ricky, thank you for the question. Sam Floridian, my rear wheel has 4 broken spokes. Should I replace all the spokes? Some are seized. Where can I get a good spoke wrench? Spokes are angled differently. How can I be sure to purchase the correct ones? Well, Sam, first thing is I want to mention that if your spokes are seized, you might want to try and loosen them up using a product made from Amsoil. You can use their metal protectant spray. You could spray it around the spokes, let it sit for a day or so, spray it again, then try and loosen them up. The best tool that I have had and ever used is from Motion Pro. They make a great spoke wrench. Jordan just had a picture of it here in the slide. Here it is. So I would get some metal protector from Motion Pro. It's really good at breaking up rusty parts, seized things like those spokes, and I would get a wrench like this from Motion Pro. The next thing I would recommend doing is making sure, and this is an extreme situation, but I wanted to mention it. In this picture, you can see where a spoke nipple has actually ripped through the rim. Probably what happened here was the spoke nipple was too small to begin with, and that's why it ripped through. Or maybe the rim was defective. Either way, what you want to use is in the next slide, something to consider, and here it is. These are washers, spoke washers. They're cupped. Before you put your nipple on the spoke, you put that washer on the nipple, and when it goes through the rim, it's going to now sit on top of the rim. It's going to give you a little more protection between the steel nipple and the aluminum rim. And it's also going to really help with corrosiveness between the nipple and the aluminum rim. What happens is you'll get corrosion, you'll get what they call seizure through dissimilar metals. What happens is the steel nipple starts to rust. The aluminum starts to oxidize. They actually start to eat into each other, and that's why you have a real problem getting them off. With this washer like this cupped washer, that'll keep that steel nipple away from the aluminum rim. Also, you can add some oil to it as you're putting them together, and you'll have a little lubrication there. It makes it easier to maintain the rim overall. In answer to your question, Sam, I don't know which spokes are broken on your bike. Yeah, you can replace just 4, but make sure you can get the other ones loose first. If you can't get the other ones loose, you're going to have to take them all out and replace them. Thanks for the question, Sam.
Hi, I'm Jeff with Motion Pro, introducing you to the Masterlink Press Tool. Now the Masterlink Press Tool is an innovative addition to our wide variety of chain tools here at Motion Pro, and what makes this tool so unique is that it both presses on and presses off Masterlink side plates. It's designed to be used with all 50 series clip style links and performs the job very easily. The Masterlink Press Tool is constructed with a billet aluminum body and hardened steel pins for long-lasting durability. It's affordably priced at $28.99 and is available from your favorite dealers nationwide.
I want to thank everybody at Motion Pro. I'm looking forward to getting their tools. We'll be telling you a bit more about that when we get our shipment from Motion Pro. What's it worth? We got a 1979 Honda CR125. This segment, of course, is sponsored by Preston Petty Products. Visit Preston Petty online and on Facebook. Thank you, Preston Petty and Paul Stannard, for being a sponsor of the show. Now, this 1979 Honda CR250 recently sold on eBay for $2,000. It was in Southern California. At first, when I looked at it, I thought, well, it seemed kind of expensive. It had the incorrect silencer on it. The bodywork was very, very rough. And just overall, it didn't look like a nice bike. But what I did see on eBay was that the guy had a video showing the bike starting up and showing him riding it. I think this is really going to be the way of the future. You're going to see a lot of guys posting a lot more ads with a video showing that the bike actually runs and runs well, or if they say it doesn't run well, you'll be able to see that in the video too. Overall, I thought this bike had pretty good bones and it ran. Yes, some of the cosmetics were rough on it. Not a big deal. Go over to VMX, you get yourself some new plastic, some new fenders, and yeah, you can get a fender or a silencer for this bike as well. It's really hard to find anything that runs these days that is almost race ready, with the exception of cosmetics, for under $2,500, $2,800. I thought $2,000 was pretty good for this bike. As I mentioned at the beginning of the show, it wasn't pretty, but it ran really well, and for $2,000 bucks, I thought it was a fair deal. Thank you, Preston Petty Products, for being a sponsor of the show. And while we're here, I think we're going to be talking a little bit more about Preston Petty right now. Got another special going this week, 10% off across the board on all Preston Petty products. That goes for grips, hats, front fenders, rear fenders, whatever they have over on their website. It's 10% off. You need to inbox me for the code. Once you get the code, you go over, you can buy whatever you want. You get 10% off the total sale. And Paul Stannard, generous person that he is giving away a free T-shirt with every offer. So when you place your order, Paul's going to give you a call. He's going to ask you what size T-shirt you wear. When you get your shipment from Preston Petty Products, you're also going to get a free T-shirt from them. Once again, thank you, Paul Stannard, Preston Petty Products, for all you do and all your support here at Vintage Motocross Q&A.
Welcome to this week's installment of the 522 Project. This segment is sponsored by Full Circle Racing. Visit them online, and I want to thank Tom McAllister and Full Circle Racing for being a sponsor of the show. Behind me is the 522 Project. We've got some color on the frame, we've got the engine in the cradle, and there's something else I want to show you tonight that I may have not mentioned before, and it has to do with the cylinder. I'm going to show you the differences between the bottom end, which is from a 1977, and the top end, which is from a 1980, and what we had to do to graft those two pieces together. This cylinder right here is a 77 CR125 cylinder, and this is the bottom end we began using for this project. I have some measurements here, as you can see. It's 81 millimeters from this hole to this hole. Those are for those mounting studs. From front to back, it was 74 millimeters, and it was 71 millimeters across the back, just under where the intake valve would go. Now, on this project, we're also using a 1980 cylinder on a 77 bottom end. And if you take a moment, you could see here that from here to here, it measures 83 millimeters, 79 millimeters front to back. Quite a difference from where the studs are on the 77 bottom end. So basically what I'm telling you is that every one of these studs in this stock bottom end had to be removed. Weld had to be added to a little bit of each corner. Everything had to be milled off. Then new stud holes had to be drilled in order to make the cylinder fit this bike the way we want it to. This job was performed by J.P. Morgan from Morgan Machine here in Northern California. And I'm going to show you how well this cylinder actually fits on here. And there you have it. That's how we got our 1980 cylinder on a 1977 bottom end. Well, that's it for this week's installment of the 522 Project. Again, I want to thank Tom McAllister and Full Circle Racing for being a sponsor of this segment. Come back next week for the next installment. I'm looking forward to showing it to you.
522 Project. I'm having a great time with that. In the product spotlight tonight, Nightmare Racing, making the finest reproduction plastic for all Kawasaki's. Mark Hildebrand, in business since, well, I think it's about 2002. He's been producing plastic for well over 18 years now. He's done a great job. He makes plastic for all Kawasaki's 1973 to 83. He even makes a couple of items that go on beyond 1983. But I wouldn't imagine anyone could restore a Kawasaki without using plastic from Nightmare Racing. And this week until Sunday, Mark is giving us a special of 10% off on everything across the board. And for the first person that places an order, sends it to Mark, and mentions that they saw it here on Vintage Motocross Q&A, you're going to get free shipping this week. I'm sorry, you have to inbox me for the code, just like with Preston Petty. Inbox me for the code. I'll give it to you. You can get it over to Mark Hildebrand at Nightmare Racing. You're going to get free shipping. And these days, free shipping is a pretty good deal. So, thank you, Nightmare Racing, Mark Hildebrand, for all your years of service with Kawasaki's and always supplying me with great stuff when I came to restoring any bikes. Thanks, Mark. Take a commercial break. Don't forget to share and comment AMSOIL if you're watching on YouTube. We get back from the commercial break, we'll have our giveaway.
Classic and vintage dirt bikes are more than a hobby. It's not just about the ride. It's about the work that goes in. The work that keeps you connected to the ride. It's about bringing the bike back to life and doing it with your own hands. It's about the adrenaline and adventure. And when it comes to putting all the pieces together, only Vinco knows the bikes and parts the way you do. Vinco, keep the ride going.
Vinco, keep the ride going. Our winner for our random share is Bruce Phillips. Bruce Phillips, if you can, get a hold of us, inbox us, or write in the comment how we can get a hold of you. And I'm going to give you your choice of a couple of different items from AMSOIL. This week I use this Miracle Wash. This stuff I really, really like. If your bike's a little dusty, or your car, you know, not dirty and muddy, but just a little dusty, and you want to give it a little bit of a detail job, you can use this Miracle Wash. You spray it on, wipes off, gives a nice real nice shine to it. Also, there's silicone spray. But look, if you need oil or you're looking for chain lubricants, let me know what you need. We're going to send you a nice package, compliments of AMSOIL. Thank you so much, Russell Waters, for all you do for us here at Vintage Motocross Q&A. Once again, the winner is Bruce Phillips. Bruce Phillips. What's up next, Jordan? Just how I see it. Last week on the show, we had a little bit of a discussion about how things are going in the vintage market, and were you people thinking that, or was everyone thinking that things are going to kind of age out? In other words, as riders get older, they get into their 60s, they get into their 70s, they're not going to really be that interested in vintage motocross anymore. Well, I posted that at Vintage Motocross Q&A, and I was very, very surprised to find out that many, many people in their 60s, even in their early 70s, are still building bikes. They may not be racing them, but they're still spending money and they're still building bikes. Also, some of the people had said, guys in their 50s and 60s, that they know some younger guys that are really now getting into the sport, certainly with their 90s bikes, but even going back and showing a real interest in the twin shock era. So, where's it going? I don't think it's ending just yet. I really don't. And as things progress, and if a show like this got bigger, you'd see more people interested in vintage bikes. It's still kind of a bit of a secret in many, many ways. Yes, people on Facebook know about it. Yes, there are some guys in ARMA and splinter groups who know about it. But there's a whole stadium full of Supercross guys and kids out there who really don't know anything about it, who are not really sure they want to go out and spend $10,000, $12,000 on a bike to go race. That if they knew about bikes like, oh, I don't know, 81 Makos or Yamaha 490s or some bikes that had a little bit longer travel, they might be out there buying those bikes, getting their feet wet on them. And once this news gets out there, I still think that there's a market out there and that there's still, and it's still untapped in a lot of ways. So if you get a minute, go over to Vintage Motocross Q&A. You could read some of the comments there about, are we getting aged out in the sport of vintage motocross? This week in motocross history, a couple of really great things happened. Number one, in 1975, it was this week in motocross history that Marty Smith clinched his second 125cc national championship. And I found this interesting for a couple of different reasons. Yes, Marty, of course, won his second national championship. Steve Wise finished up on a Kawasaki, but Danny Turner took a third place on a Bultaco. That's the only podium that Bultaco ever saw in AMA National Championship racing, and it was under Danny Turner when he did it. So that's what happened this week in motocross history in 1975. And in 1980, Chuck Sutton went 1-1 in Binghamton, New York to clinch his 500cc national championship. Chuck Sutton, great rider, great advocate of the sport. Advocate isn't the word I'm looking for. Ambassador. Chuck is a good ambassador of the sport. He's been all over the world. He still goes around promoting vintage motocross, and he's done a great job. So this week in motocross history, it was Chuck Sutton, Marty Smith, and Danny Turner who made their mark in the motocross world. This segment, of course, is sponsored by Vinco. What's up next, Jordan? Got the announcements. Yeah, we got a couple of really good ones too. We had Vintage Motocross Radio last week. My guest was Jim Holly. Jim had some really great stories, and I think Jordan's put together a little soundbite segment for us that we can listen to right now. Then I'll tell you about my guest coming up this week.
We're getting the bikes ready for the next national. Tommy's working on the white bike for Johnny, and I'm working on the red bike for me. And Al Baker calls me up, and he says, "Hey Jim, I got to come over. I got to get that red bike for Johnny to practice on." And Al was running on a shoestring budget. He didn't have enough bikes, and Honda started with Hirohito Honda. His son started Mugen, so
Yes.
They had some connections, but they didn't have the budget, like the factory guys did. So anyhow, I said, "Well, you can come over, but you're not taking that motorcycle, man, because now you got to remember earlier in the year, Kenny Clark just took all my motorcycles, and I didn't have nothing to go. And now here again, I proved myself for Mugen, and I'm running, top tens and stuff, and I'm getting this bike out there. And now you say you're going to take another bike away from me? That's not going to happen."
Now, where are you guys working on the bikes, Jimmy? You're at your house, or where are you?
We're at my dad's garage in Northridge, California.
Okay.
Yeah, we used that, and he had everything in there, lathes and drill presses and parts washers, everything like that. So
Sure.
anyhow, Al comes over and he's in the driveway, and I go, "Al, you step one foot in this garage, man, and grab that motorcycle. There's going to be a problem here." And sure enough, he stepped in, and I clocked him, and he went flying over the parts washer, and I was ready to pounce on him again. My mother came outside. "Jimmy, don't, you're going to kill him." And I go, "Well, he's not taking that bike, Mom, I can tell you that right now." But, yeah, I think Al got a lot of respect, and I had to fight to keep my ride. I mean, that was literally, I had to punch the guy to keep my bike.
Only on Vintage Motocross Radio, you're going to hear stories like that from guys like Jim Holly. My guest this Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time will be Billy West. Billy West is a factory mechanic. He had the Golden Wrench Award the year that Rick Burgett won the 500cc national championship. Billy was also a factory wrench for guys like Steve Wise, Rex Staton, and so many more. Had a real long career and a real successful career as a mechanic. Went on to be in the vintage motocross restoration business. And I'm going to be talking to him about that as well. So please join me this Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. My guest will be Billy West. I told you a little bit about this earlier. Back in 2016, Preston Petty and Paul Stannard decided to revive the Preston Petty line. And Paul Stannard went out. They had new molds made. Preston Petty was watching everything go on as this was happening. Some of the first fenders came off the line in 2016. The first 25 fenders were white. White fenders Mutter fronts, just like this, MX fronts. There were 25 of them. The first 20 were given away to family members, very special people in the industry. There are 5 left, just 5 left. They're only going to be available here on this show, autographed by Preston Petty. There's a letter of authenticity. All proceeds will go directly to Preston Petty. 1 fender per week for 5 weeks. Tune in to our show next week, and I'm going to tell you about how you can buy a fender autographed with a letter of authenticity from Preston Petty. Only 5 left. There was only 25 ever made. I want to thank Paul Standard, Preston Petty, for all they do here at Vintage Motocross Q&A, and I want to thank them for making this special only available to viewers of the show. The Brit Bike Breakfast, that's this Sunday at August 30th. My friend Al Roof is putting this on. Grits and Greens Southern Cuisine. That's at North Street in Lowell, North Carolina. You all can get there about 8:30 a.m. And you have to be in compliance with the COVID-19 thing, but it's the Brit Bike Breakfast put on by Al Roof. Not too many things going on these days with motorcycle events. So if you're in North Carolina, anywhere near Lowell, go down there and spend some time with the Brit Bike guys. And you don't have to be on a British bike in order to go. You can go with any bike. I'm sure they'd be happy to see you. Thanks, Al. I hope it's a great turnout for you. We still have shirts available here at Vintage Motocross Q&A, just $21.99. Beautiful cotton shirts come in a variety of sizes. There's a link in the description. Go over there, get yourself a shirt. Vintage Motocross Q&A, $21.99. Sponsorship opportunities are still available, and we have grown quite a bit in the last month or so. Between our friends, Nightmare Racing, Full Circle Racing, Motion Pro, they're jumping on board, and they know this because they've seen results and they've heard about the results that Vinco has received and AMSOIL, and things are going really well for them. So there's still some opportunities for you as a sponsor if you want to come on board at Vintage Motocross Q&A. And as I've said before, the show reaches about between 18 and 20,000 people a week. 18 to 20,000 people a week. Now, I don't care what you do on Facebook or any place else. There's no way that you're going to promote your product and all the pages on Facebook and reach 20,000 people without becoming a royal pain in the ass. So if you become a sponsor of Vintage Motocross Q&A, I can do that for you. 20,000 people a week. Plus, we're going to be making some standalone commercials alone throughout the week, whether it's for Motion Pro or Vinco and a couple of other people, and we can do that for you. Contact me. I'll send you a sponsorship proposal package. We'll put something together that fits your budget. I'm looking forward to speaking to you about that. I want to thank everybody for watching Vintage Motocross Q&A tonight. Thank our sponsors once again, and for the people that sent in bikes for the Moto Showcase, and all the people that watch and share and have supported us on YouTube. Thank you all so much. It's been a good week. It's been a good night. Thank you all again for watching. I don't know where Gino is. Today is National Dog Day. I don't know if he's coming out tonight. Gino? Gino? I don't think he's going to make it tonight. Oh, here he comes. Gino! Oh, there he comes. Okay. Good night, everybody. Thanks for watching. I didn't think you were going to make it tonight.